Back then, and as I said, we're going to be needing every kobo that we can find now because we need it now more than ever before. You know how it is. Reforms that are going on, statements that have been made, government policy directions, removal of subsidy on petrol, and all that it entails. Now, in the midst of all of this, Nigeria has always been known to favor, arguably, large government. When you see a government person, you know you have seen a government person. Apart from the government person, there might be easily somewhere like 20, 25, maybe 30 people surrounding him. That's just the way it is, and that's just the most visible aspect of this. There are other aspects, of course, that all lead up to a high cost of governance. It's not just us. From time to time, I hear the Americans too complain and say that they have to find a way to lower the cost of governance. Well, that, I imagine, is also going to be one of our concerns. And our guest is Mr. Debo Onifade. Mr. Onifade is an author, he's an engineer, and policy analyst. Good morning to you, Mr. Debo Onifade.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Yes, as I was saying, first of all, give me your impression as to, because we're going to talk about bringing down the cost of governance. I just gave my own 2 bits. Do you think the cost of governance is high enough to merit a conversation on ways and means of reducing it?
Thank you so much. So first of all, the reason this has become expedient is, is the way our budget is structured. So 2023, we have budgeted about over 8 trillion naira for recurrent expenditure. We budgeted over 6 trillion for debt servicing, and we anticipated 9 trillion revenue. Of course, the whole budget is about 21 trillion naira, and that's over 10 trillion naira budget deficit. Now, if you were using if Nigeria was using its loans, its deficit to finance capital projects only, probably would have made some sense. But if you add 6-point-something trillion to 8 trillion, so you're looking at over 8 trillion, you're looking at 8.3 trillion, you're looking at close to 15 trillion as against 9.7 trillion revenue. So it means that over 5 trillion of our budget is being used, over 5 trillion of our loans are being used to finance either recurring expenditure or debt services. So you're using loans to service loans. You look at last year, World Bank said Nigeria spent over 96% of its revenue to service loans. Some people argued that number. So it's probably between 80 and 96 or thereabout % of our revenue we use to service loans. So that tells us that we have to do something. And for me, it's not just about cutting. You can do whatever you want to do with your money if you have a lot of excess. And I'll continue to remind Nigerians that Nigeria is not a rich country, as some of us say. We're very rich in human capital, very, very rich in human capital, but we're not rich in terms of resources and non-human resources and things like that. So if you look at the income, what we make, then it becomes vis-a-vis what we spend. It becomes extremely, essential that we have to cut expenses, and we also have to grow our revenue. And so I fully agree with your expenses, but there's not much. Even if you cut from 9 trillion to the recurrent is about 8.3 trillion thereabout. If you cut that by 50%, you're still looking at 4 trillion. That compared with our revenue is still small. It's still, I'll say, it's still too close. So no matter how much we cut, we still have to increase revenue. And in terms of cutting, my view is that you must start from, the government has to start from their house. Like the president, it must start from the presidency. For you to have the courage to go to the House of Assembly to aggressively cut the expenses or call the state governors together and put in place laws that can force them to cut expenses, you must start from the presidency. If leader leads by example, and I think we'll probably talk about that more today. So I believe we have to start from the presidency. Go ahead.
Indeed, thank you. And well, as you know, the president, I don't know, maybe he's coming in now. He was expected to be in before this, maybe Saturday or Sunday, but then suddenly the president is spending a day or two more outside. But he's been out there and seeking for ways to bring investment into the country. And it would seem from reports that as a result of, shall we say, turning over a fresh page, yes, governance is a continuum, but the way President TINUBU has sort of carried himself, the policies, indications that we have so far, whereas many people are actually crediting it and are saying that, well, previous administrations didn't have the guts to do the biggest one of all, which is the removal of the subsidy. Of course, you also know that people are saying, but we are waiting anxiously to see what is going to be done to put something in the pockets of those who will be bearing the burden of these admittedly necessary policies. So the president is abroad. He's looking for all ways to attract people to Nigeria. He's been saying that we're open for business. If the policies are just right, are you optimistic that we could actually begin to redeem ourselves? It might be a long road, but we could actually begin if people that have left, businesses that have left, now see the direction Nigeria is going and say, you know what, it looks like there's a more level playing field. Are you hopeful or optimistic that that could be indeed a way?
So yes, I'm a very optimistic Nigerian. I am positive, but we also have to call the government out, let them know what needs to be done. I'm also a solutions-driven person. I don't like to just talk about the problems. And I think that, again, this subsidy removal was great. I think a lot of Nigerians have supported that. But you have to motivate Nigerians by cutting costs. Now, there's be two ways. Revenue must increase, and then we must cut costs. Now, if we don't cut costs to make it very clear to Nigerians that we're cutting costs. I mean, I'm not talking about I'm not going to collect salaries. Nobody cares about small salaries. I'm talking about major cuts in governance that is glaring to Nigerians. Nigerians are already Nigerians are already cutting their expenses, and they want to see their government cut their expenses. For me, no matter the foreign direct investment, yes, the dollar devaluation, unfortunately, is good for investment, foreign direct investment. I mean, people don't want to hear this, but that's a fact. The devaluation enhances our export opportunities because now we can produce cheaper, we can compete with some other exporters, but we're not there yet.
Yes.
We're not an export machine at this time. So we're not going to immediately benefit. We're already benefiting in some ways. Of course, income the revenue is going up significantly. Of course, the dollar loans are also going up. So the revenue is going up, but the dollar loans will take that. We also have VAT. I'm aware that government is introducing VAT payment for this for petrol and diesel now. If that is administered well, we're looking at over 500 billion naira increased earnings in that area. So we're already going to get some benefits from what the government has done, Bola Tinubu, and I think we all need to applaud him for that. Mm-hmm. But these are not enough. We're in deep trouble.
Okay.
We are in deep trouble, and for us to get past this trouble, we have to drastically. I'm talking about. I just said 15 trillion for debt servicing and recurrent expenditure. Let's even forget about capital expenditure. We don't even have enough money. We're not even making enough money to take care of our recurrent expenditure and debt service. So because and no matter the FDIs, foreign direct investments that we get, it's going to take time. So this is more like long term, or let me say medium term.
Okay.
I'm talking about short-term solutions. Short-term solutions, it includes, of course, things like increasing salaries. But for me, before we even go into helping people, I think the government first wants to show that, hey, because of this over-bloated budget, this is what we have done. Because now NLC is asking for 200. Go ahead.
All right. Oh, okay. Yeah, you spoke briefly there, about Forex as well. You might have seen it. There are newspaper reports that the dollar still hasn't, Naira hasn't appreciated against the dollar yet. Maybe it's too quick, but maybe all of us were in a euphoric state following the announcement of President TINUBU that there were going to be radical changes, and announcing on Inauguration Day, without even getting to the office, that subsidy is gone. It sort of set the tone that, wow, just like that, what hasn't been doable for, God knows how many administrations has just been done. But then you look at reports this morning, there are people who are observing that the banks, for instance, one of the policies that sort of has emerged is that, there should be no restrictions on what you take out of your domiciliary account. Well, there have been reports, by customers as well as investigative journalists that the banks are not cooperating. The banks are saying that the money simply is not there. It's very, very scarce. So I guess you begin to wonder how on board are government agencies and parastatals with government policy. Because if the president said, we've now collapsed it, there's no such thing as different foreign exchange rates, which has been largely applauded, as you know. The president was abroad very, very recently. Probably he might even still be abroad. A lot of people have said, kudos, that's the way to go. But then locally here, are you surprised that people walking into the bank following the presidential announcement now say that, I think I need $6,000, please. I say, sorry, you can't get it. Not now. Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't, because the devaluation, I mean, they don't like to use that word devaluation, but I think it's like devaluation. Devaluation will help, but doesn't necessarily mean that it solves the problem totally. Devaluation will make more dollars available because now there's willing buyer, willing seller, but eventually the CBN will still have to regulate. There's no country in the world that completely leaves its currency to market forces, 100%. So they intervene. That's the word. CBN will still eventually intervene, and I'm hearing that they are almost ready to start intervening. So what they've done is to let things settle down, try to see where to settle. People were talking about 640 to 680. Right now, it doesn't seem, it's not coming that low.
No.
But at some point, CBN will have
still
to
in the 700s. Okay.
Yeah. So CBN will still eventually intervene, and the intervention will also increase availability of dollars. But until then, things are better. But it's not gonna. It's not that we should expect that dollar just becomes absolutely available to everybody.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's just that the high price of petroleum products became immediately available to everybody in minutes. Within minutes of the president speaking about it, that high price had become available to everybody in Nigeria. So maybe people thought that that was the way it was going to go. Mustafa, one moment, please. Mr. Mustafa in Bauchi, good morning to you, sir. I just lost. So, well, I was making the joke about the immediate high prices being available. You know, Nigerians are apprehensive at the moment because they're thinking that, hey, people are also telling us that they want to increase, they want to hike the tariffs on electricity. So, whereas we understand what economists are saying, that this is a task that must be done, but I don't mind slight injury in this game, but I don't want to be carried out on a stretcher. So
that's what I keep saying. That's what I was saying, that if you look at, I mean, and it's not just the federal government, you have a lot of states that have borrowed like ridiculous, like criminal amounts of money. And some of the new governors are saying, like, they're shocked at what they're saying. Governors are borrowing 20 years, and, you have an overbloated legislative arm, there's no way Nigerians will be happy to continue to bear higher petrol costs, higher diesel costs, higher electricity tariff, if we do not see that the government is also cutting costs.
Okay.
And again, I think that maybe there's a bigger crisis in the states and maybe in the House. But I think that if we find ways to cut costs, and because for me, we have to help poor people. And I've been saying it that this all subsidy removal, even when you hear government talk about saying so many things they talk about, they seem to focus more on the upper middle class and the rich people. The poor people should be our top priority. And I'm talking about the 70% or so Nigerians that don't have cars. And people talk about car owners. I don't think those should be our top priorities for them. The first priority is people that do not have cars. And I keep saying, there's only one short-term solution. Only one. One is mass transit. Now, states, Lagos is doing pretty good. I don't know if the prices have gone up in any way with the buses, red and blue buses. But states, federal government and states have to work together to see how, and they can start ordering those vehicles today. So for me, if we do whatever we can do to make life easier for the poor people, and then we cut costs of governance, then there'll be people will be happier with the government. There'll be greater acceptability. But if we're not doing anything, we've removed subsidy. Naira has been devalued. We're not doing anything yet to help poor people. Nothing, no major mass transit rollout from anywhere. Well, now electricity tariff is about to go up.
Indeed, indeed. I guess we need to wait and see, and that wait is not going to be an interminable wait because President Bola TINUBU, as you know, even way back decades before he became president, in fact, maybe when people didn't even know he was going to be president, talking about his colloquiums, he's always focused, zeroed in on human capital development and the development of the ordinary man. I'll come back and talk with you about agriculture and the role that is also going to play in all of this sort of being able to get up off our knees and walk a bit. But in the meantime, Mazi Okoroafo has called in. Good morning to you, Mazi Okoroafo.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. You see, the governance we should look at it by if the present government, the state, local, and the federal can manage the available resources and whatever, all these vehicles, stationaries, and it will help. But when you come to in terms of furniture, at least you can adjust. But the situation whereby you see an organization or a state going to buy 10 new cars for commissioners. Now look at what is happening in a state. The commissioners are supposed to back out of the houses, but they refuse. They stay hanging. And the government is giving them up to July to pack out. Now you ask yourself, the government has their space. Is it their own permanent residence? Do they have their own personal house? Can they pack and go? Allow the new government people to stay there, which is, and you look at the side of agriculture. So we say you are going to ask the guests. There is need for government to try as much as possible. This is palliative. All these fertilizer people are talking, like what they did in Gombe.
Yes.
Gombe state governor said fertilizer is 29,000, but it's now giving to the people 19,000. Government is now subsidized by 10,000, which is very good palliative. Now, the same thing applicable to other sectors of the economy.
Indeed.
This fertilizer is what the farmers need.
Mazi, I beg your pardon, sir. I've got to interrupt now.
The better for us. Good morning.
Thank you very much. So, coming back to you, Mr. Onifade, briefly talk about agriculture, because just as Mazi Okoroafo also spoke, everybody is sort of looking that we are an agricultural people. Very, very briefly, please, in no more than a couple of bullet points.
So, of course, agriculture is number one. It's the number one source of jobs in Nigeria. We have to avoid handing out cash. The Anchor Borrower program allowed a lot of corruption. We have to innovate ways to help farmers, maybe with cards, electronic ways. We have to find ways to help them, provide facility, provide subsidized fertilizers, and limit or totally avoid handing out cash.
Indeed.
Now that anything that can reduce corruption, because you want to help people and you steal 50% of the money.
Yes.
That's not valuable.
Okay.
So we need to help the farmers, but we have to make sure we avoid cash.
We avoid cash while increasing value. Well, I want to thank you very much. I wish we had more time, Mr. Debo and Ifeadi, to talk about this. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Okay.
Thank you very much.
And that's our program today. Please join us tomorrow